Around 15 years ago, a captivating allure drew me and my best friend, Jackson, to an abandoned resort or bungalow colony nestled off a secluded dirt path near my hometown in New York. This sprawling complex, once a bustling hub of activity, was now a decaying ghost town, its overgrown grass and crumbling structures whispering tales of a bygone era. Intrigued by its eerie charm, we embarked on an exploration that would soon turn into a night filled with unease and chilling encounters. We ventured into this desolate landscape under the cloak of night, our flashlights cutting through the darkness like twin beams in a dense forest. The sprawling complex, a maze of abandoned bungalows, held an undeniable pull. As we delved deeper, a sense of eerie isolation crept in, the silence broken only by the echo of our footsteps and the occasional rustle of unseen creatures. We split up to cover more ground, the promise of exploration outweighing the growing unease. As I navigated through the labyrinth of decaying buildings, I stumbled upon what seemed to be the main hall or office. Its imposing structure stood in stark contrast to the smaller bungalows. Desperate to unlock its secrets, I tried each door, but they were all stubbornly resistant. All locked. But why? What was inside? I had to know. With no luck in the main building, I shifted my focus to the bathroom facilities. These were an oddity in themselves, large, open spaces with no dividing doors between the men's and women's sections. As I stepped inside, my foot landed on something unusual, strange red marks on the dirty concrete floor. Blood? My curiosity spiked. I ventured deeper into the eerie expanse, the darkness amplifying every creak and groan of the dilapidated structure. Just as I was about to step into the heart of the women's section, I heard Jackson's voice on the walkie-talkie. He had found something that had spooked him, and his urgency was palpable. Without hesitation, I turned and fled, the adrenaline coursing through my veins. I was running so fast I nearly slipped and fell, all because of the red marks on the floor. Emerging from the building, I met up with Jackson, our shared experience a silent bond between us. He recounted a chilling encounter with an elderly woman, her appearance both startling and terrifying. The details of her actions remained a blur, lost in the chaos of the moment, but it was clear she had been startled by his intrusion. The image of those red marks on the bathroom floor, combined with Jackson's harrowing experience, painted a picture of a place far more sinister than we had initially imagined. The possibility of someone living in these abandoned ruins, their motives unknown, scared me to my core. We quickly retreated, the emotion of exploration replaced by a primal instinct for survival. We had to get out of there and fast. The following days were filled with a mix of disbelief and fear. We tried to rationalize the events, to find logical explanations, but the unsettling truth remained: we had stumbled upon something far more disturbing than a mere abandoned resort. The red marks, the mysterious woman, and the overall atmosphere of the place created a haunting narrative that would stay with us long after that night. The experience left an indelible mark on our perceptions of the world, a reminder that even in the most ordinary places, darkness and mystery can lurk just beneath the surface. It was a lesson in the fragility of the human experience, a stark contrast to the thrill of exploration that had initially drawn us to that desolate place. The memory of that night, the eerie silence broken only by the echoes of our footsteps and the unsettling encounters with the unknown, continues to haunt us. It serves as a reminder of the importance of trusting our instincts and the power of human resilience in the face of the inexplicable. I rent out my South Carolina beach house on Airbnb when I'm not there. It's a small place, 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. The master bedroom, where I keep my stuff when I'm not there, is locked tight. I have a regular lock and a deadbolt, so it's pretty secure. This past spring, I wanted to escape the Massachusetts cold and head down to my house for a week. I work remotely, so I can do that. Usually, my cleaning lady comes after each guest, but I decided to save the money and clean it myself since I was going right after the last renters left. The last guests were a couple, a guy named Ramon and his fiancée. They seemed nice through our messages. I prefer couples or groups of women as renters, less chance of wild parties and damage. The drive down took about 16 hours with a few stops. I arrived around 10 p.m., exhausted. Unlocked the door, dropped my bags in the master bedroom, and passed out. Woke up at 11:30 p.m., confused and disoriented. I looked around the living room, everything seemed in place. No signs of anything being moved or messed up. Checked the guest bedrooms, both empty except one bed looked slept in. Figured they were the cleanest guests ever. I have a camera on the front porch, mostly to keep an eye on things if a guest is giving me trouble. Curiosity got the best of me, so I checked the camera app. Sure enough, it caught a guy entering the house 3 days earlier, alone. No sign of a woman. Strange. Checked the rest of the footage, nothing else out of the ordinary. I got a weird feeling, so I messaged Ramon to see if they checked out okay, even though it was late. Went back to the guest bedroom where I thought he slept, started checking under the bed, inside the closets. Nothing. The other guest bedroom was empty too. As I was about to leave, the master bedroom door clicked shut really quietly. I went into the living room and said, "Ramon, are you still in here?" No answer, but I could see the light was on under the door. Got on all fours to look under the door and saw 2 feet standing right inside. Panicked, I ran to the kitchen, grabbed the biggest knife I could find. By the time I got back, he was still standing there. I yelled and tackled him, trying to hold him down. He fought back, but I managed to overpower him. He was homeless, reeking of sweat and desperation. Yelled at him, asking what he was doing in my house. He tried to grab my face, but I kept him pinned down. Finally, I broke free, ran to the phone, and called 911, keeping an eye on the guy. The police came, arrested him, but he denied everything. They let him go because he had nothing on him. He was speaking in a foreign accent, I didn't understand it, it seemed European. I felt as if the police didn't do their job. After everyone left, I changed the lock code on the door and I contacted Airbnb about what happened. I didn't receive payment for the extra day Ramon squatted in my house. They did apparently ban him from ever using the app again. But it doesn't really feel like proper justice though. When he was potentially waiting to stab me in my own house in my own bedroom, the man was in my house, in my bedroom. I still don't feel safe. How did he get in? For how long was he in there?
This story takes place when I was a junior in high school. For context, here's a little background information. Back in the day, I was a pretty involved student, taking all the hard classes and participating in a few varsity sports. I was always busy and didn't have much time for myself, and part of me was thankful for that. It provided an escape from a world where my parents had recently parted ways, and my older brother had just gone to college. It was just me and my little brother then. He was also a swimmer and a smart kid in his own right. We were really similar, even to this day, but probably because of the stress our family situation put on us at the time, we didn't get along at all. One of those wet winter days in the Midwest, I'd put in my time at school and swim practice, and I still had to sit down for several hours of homework. This time, I had to write an essay for some advanced class that I wasn't really interested in. I dropped my swim bag at the door when I got home and looked around my house to see if anyone was home. Empty. Dad must be out with Reese at swim practice. His club team had the slot at the pool after the high school team was done. I popped a mouthful of Cheez-Its and headed down to the basement to my office to get some schoolwork done. The house was a middle-class 2-story with an unfinished basement, except for what I referred to as my office. From a career past, my dad used to work from home but no longer did. I was the only one who used this place, so my family, or what was left of it, just called it Quinn's office. I made my way across the concrete floors and unattached carpet samples down there to the one finished-out room in the basement. I flicked on the CFL light. It was like any other night after practice, I still had hours of homework to do. So I turned on the computer and started typing away. I was typing for what seemed like an hour, trying to bring to words what the concept of hedonism and the picture of Dorian Gray meant to me as best I could or as convincingly as I could. Out of the dark, I heard my little brother call out to me, "Quinny, Quinny, come up." Almost reflexively, I called back to him, "Reese, I'm working, what do you need?" We would yell through the house like brothers do, but it took me a minute to realize I didn't hear him come home. I got no response, only for a couple of minutes. Again, I heard my little brother's voice sing out, "Quinny, Quinny, come up." It felt strange hearing those words carry across the dark concrete floor. He's supposed to be at swim practice. I called back out to him, asking if he needed anything, but again, I received no answer. I thought about just starting my essay again, but the family situation was delicate at best, and I didn't want to be in trouble if my little brother actually needed something. I made the decision to get up and go find out for myself. I bounded up the basement staircase the only way a high schooler can, and I called out again for my brother, "Reese, what's up? I'm really busy." I checked all around the main floor, looking for my little brother or even signs he was home. No shoes, no backpack, so he wasn't home, and there was no car in the driveway either. The only reason my dad would be gone right now would be to pick him up. Satisfied, I turned back for the stairs when I heard my little brother's voice ring out, "Quinny, Quinny, come up." This time, every hair on my body stood on end. It just didn't make sense. He had to be at practice, and if he really needed me, he would have come to me. I go to the base of the second floor stairs and called out to him one more time, "Reese, what's going on? Are you okay?" For a minute, no answer. "Reese, I'm really busy, can you tell me what's up?" It's quiet for way too long as I stared up the dark staircase. Logically, I had no reason to believe anyone was up there until I heard Reese's voice calmly speak this time and not call out in his sing-song way those same 4 words, "Quinny, Quinny, come up." "What?" I asked under my breath. I couldn't comprehend the situation. I did a quick inventory of any probable scenario: break-in, wrong voice, a prank. I would have seen something at this point. It had to be Reese, and maybe helping him would make me a good brother. So I began up the stairs, my heart pounding with each step, and I was about to make the landing to the dark second floor when I heard the buzz of the garage door motor. I ran back down the stairs and looked out the window. It was my father's sedan, and he and my little brother got out. I stumbled from the window to the hall where they would enter, and I felt my heart almost stop beating. I collapsed on the floor and just started to cry uncontrollably. So, my dad, a lifelong parrot enthusiast, finally got his African gray named Kevin when he retired at 50. I was thrilled for him. Dad spent a lot of time teaching Kevin an impressive vocabulary, even training him to understand the meaning of words like hello, what's up, food, thank you, and good. Sadly, Dad passed away at 70, leaving us siblings with the question of what to do with Kevin. Neither my brother nor sister wanted the responsibility, and their spouses were a hard no. The thought of giving Kevin away, severing one of my last connections to my dad, his best friend, in a way, was unbearable. So, Kevin came to live with me. My house doesn't have a basement, so the den on the lowest level became Kevin's domain. He's a social butterfly, a real chatterbox, especially in the mornings. But by later in the day and at night, he quiets down considerably. When his energy gets a little too high, a blanket over his cage does the trick, creating a calming nighttime routine. I usually watch TV in the den at night to keep him company, then head upstairs to my room around 10 o'clock to let him get his beauty sleep. That's the Kevin backstory. 2 years in, I know his every chirp and squawk. Speaking of unusual behavior, there was this one night in December. Around 11 p.m., Kevin started making a racket while I was trying to sleep. Since I live alone, I keep my bedroom door open to catch any house noises. Hearing him squawking past dark, especially that late, was way out of the ordinary. Something was definitely bothering him. I went downstairs to investigate. Wide awake on the lower perch, he greeted me with a flurry of greetings, hellos, what's ups, and his own name, all while bobbing his head and doing a full-body dance. Offering food didn't interest him, so I covered his cage hoping for some peace. No luck. Stuck in the kitchen, I couldn't ignore the persistent noises. Work the next day, and sleep deprivation wasn't an option. Feeling a little out of my depth, bird expertise-wise, I went back downstairs and uncovered him. Still dancing, still squawking, still distressed. Then it hit me. I thought I heard something in the pantry closet, just a few feet from his cage. Walking over cautiously, I hovered my hand over the light switch, which was outside the door. The pantry door has one of those big glass panels, so when I flicked the switch on, there it was, the unmistakable outline of a body inside. Fight or flight kicked in, and in a surge of adrenaline, I chose fight. Screaming, I flung open the door and tackled the intruder, sending him sprawling to the floor. He tried to fight back, but I overpowered him easily, pinning him in what I can only describe as a chokehold. This disheveled, 50-something homeless man smelled to match his appearance. "Who are you? Why are you in my house?" I yelled. He lunged for my face, maybe aiming to gouge my eyes, but I held him down, throwing punches in between. The whole time, Kevin was going ballistic in his cage. Finally, when the man seemed subdued, I bolted for the phone, raced back, and kept him pinned while I called 911. He was arrested, but had nothing on him, no ID, no wallet, completely broke. Basically, judgment-proof, meaning even if I sued, there'd be nothing to collect. Turns out, he'd raided my pantry, tearing into peanut butter jars, boxes of cookies and crackers, the whole canned and boxed food works. Who knows what else that man might have taken or done in my house if it weren't for my dad's parrot. Kevin's unusual behavior that night, a stark contrast to his usual nighttime routine, became my unlikely guardian angel. In a way, it felt like a part of Dad was watching over me through that bird after all. Now, Kevin isn't just a pet, he's a feathered family member, a great reminder of my dad and the bizarre, adrenaline-fueled night he helped me thwart a home invasion. A couple of years back, fresh off the grief of losing my mom, the weight of being her only child settled on my shoulders. Her house became mine, a looming inheritance. Back then, I was stuck in a cramped, drafty apartment, barely scraping by. The decision was a no-brainer: move in. The house was paid off, a gift that would save me a ton of money, perfect for getting back on my feet. The plan was simple: live there a few years, save up, then sell it and finally buy the house I'd always dreamed of. Lease up at the ramshackle apartment, I packed my things and headed across town to the house. It sat in a community of farmland, though most of the fields lay fallow now, empty and overgrown. My mom's land mirrored the rest, an old barn-style house plopped in the middle of a giant field, with only a tiny, overgrown path leading to it. The first week was a whirlwind of cleaning and unpacking, settling into this new, strangely isolated space. One night, while putting things away, I heard the unmistakable rumble of a car approaching the house. Peeking out the window, I saw an old pickup truck creeping down the overgrown path. Strange, since the only reason someone would be coming there would be for the house. Just as it reached the path's end, it stopped abruptly. I could make out a man's silhouette in the driver's seat, but not much else. He sat there for a while, headlights cutting a stark path through the field, the silence thick and unsettling. Before I could even wrap my head around it, he did a three-point turn and drove away, leaving me staring out the window into the darkness. Probably a wrong address, I convinced myself, but the image of that truck sent shivers down my spine. It was just too creepy to see someone out there so late, especially in such a desolate place. A few days passed, the house gradually transforming from an unfamiliar space into a place that felt somewhat like home. Sunday night, I was unwinding after a long week, catching up on TV with a home-cooked meal, when that familiar sound returned, a car approaching. Window peek again, and there was that same pickup truck, headlights off this time, like a predator stalking its prey. No way it was an accident twice. This time, a knot of dread formed in my stomach. Check my phone, almost 1 a.m. Who comes rolling up at that hour with good intentions? The truck rolled right up to the house and parked with a crunch of gravel. A man got out and started walking towards the porch with a determined gait. Anxious, I watched from behind the curtain, but there was no doorbell ring or knock. Cautiously, I crept to the front door and peeked through the peephole. A man stood there, bathed in the faint moonlight filtering through the window, staring right at the door. Terror flooded my veins. He seemed to be contemplating something, his body language tense and unpredictable. Then, just as abruptly as he appeared, he turned and hurried back to his truck, driving away fast. Shaken to my core, I called the police, but there wasn't much they could do without any evidence of a break-in. Went to bed that night with a bad feeling gnawing at my gut, and rightfully so. As if on cue, I woke up to what I thought was a knock at the door. Just one, a single, jarring rap. Shot up in bed and checked the window, but the truck was nowhere in sight. Heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs, I left my room to investigate, every muscle tensed for movement. But as I reached the top of the stairs, I saw the front door ajar, hanging open a few inches. Frozen in place, moments later I heard footsteps walking through the hallway downstairs. Panic seized me. My breath hitched in my throat, and I could hear the footsteps getting louder, coming up the stairs. Thinking fast, I bolted into the spare bedroom, the one closest to the stairs, and dialed 911 with trembling fingers. As the footsteps got louder, coming up the stairs with a heavy thud each step, I hid behind a clothes rack, the phone pressed tight to my ear. They went straight into the main bedroom, and I could hear the rustle of movement, the creak of drawers, like someone searching for something specific. Too scared to breathe, let alone speak on the phone, I just sat there silently, praying they wouldn't find me. Sitting there silently. They spent a few minutes going through the bedroom before leaving and going back downstairs and finally exit visiting the house. I started talking to the officer as I ran up to the back window to see if I could identify them before they got away. It was dark, but I could see that it was the same man who was on my porch earlier. He was walking in the backyard toward the field of tall grass, eventually disappearing in it. Police came by and tried to find any evidence to help with the case, but my description of the man was about all there was and not very helpful, I'm afraid. I don't know what that man wanted, but he seemed to be looking for something he knew was there. It makes me think maybe he knew of something my mother was hiding in the house. And after hearing of her passing he wanted to steal it. But once I realized he had to have known I was home and probably in the bedroom, it terrified me to think about how he still went in and looked around. What was he planning to do to me if I was still in there? I ended up selling the house a month later because I was too scared of thinking that the man would be coming back. Even now I still check every few months to see if there were any reports of recent break-ins at that address, but it's been quiet ever since that night. There's a forest near my hometown, riddled with camping spots. A couple years back, visiting family for a week, I decided to camp solo for a night or two. Gear wasn't fancy, but I wasn't aiming for anything crazy, just a quiet spot to pitch a tent. Started on a random trail, figuring it'd lead to a familiar pond a few miles in. By mile 5 or 6, though, it was clear this path was going somewhere else. Intrigued, I kept going, but after hours of walking, it felt endless. Legs getting tired, I found a decent spot off the trail to camp for the night. Dusk was settling, so I raced the fading light to set up camp and get a fire going. Just minutes before darkness swallowed the forest, the fire crackled to life, casting a decent glow around my little campsite, but not enough to venture more than 15 or 20 feet away. Sipping calming tea, I let the day fade. Time blurred, but an hour or so into the night, I heard someone coming down the trail. At first, I thought maybe a bear, but as they got closer, the unmistakable figure of a person emerged. Strained to see in the dim firelight, I watched them walk by, just a dark outline with a backpack. They didn't stop, just kept moving on the trail, past my campsite. Strange, I thought, no flashlight for a night hike. But the backpack gave me a sense of, they know what they're doing, and I dismissed it. Another hour by the fire, then I let it burn low before crawling into my tent for the night. Nature called in the middle of the night, and despite the discomfort of waking up, I couldn't fall back asleep. Unzipping the tent, I walked a good distance away to answer the call. Turning to head back, a flicker of movement in the moonlight caught my eye, on the other side of my tent. The light was weak, but something deep down told me it was a person. Heart pounding, I crept back to the tent, eyes scanning the trees around my camp. Everything was so dark. Reaching in, I grabbed my backpack and fumbled out my flashlight. Click. Finally some light. A beam of light sliced through the darkness, revealing a tall figure standing by the trail, just like the one I'd seen earlier. But as fast as I saw them, they vanished behind the trees, swallowed by the shadows. Silence returned, thick and creepy. Frozen for a moment, I sat there with the flashlight, the weight of the situation settling in. One thing was clear, it was time to leave. Grabbing what I could, my backpack, leaving the cheap tent behind, I scrambled back to the trail. Reaching the spot where I'd last seen the figure, my fear spiked. No sign of them anywhere. Were they watching? Following? Oh, my God. What if he wanted to harm me? Flashlight beam dancing across the trees, I cautiously made my way back. Sunrise painted the sky halfway through my trek, a welcome sight as I finally emerged from the forest, unharmed. Back home, I looked up the trail I'd taken. Turns out, it wasn't even an established path. Maybe it was another explorer, just following wherever the trail led. But that doesn't explain the late-night visitor. Why stalk my camp? How long had they been there? The chilling truth is, that night could have easily ended differently. Leaving when I did was probably the only way I got out of there alive. Now, the memory of that night still terrifies me to my core. The forest, once a place of peace and solitude, now holds a lingering sense of unease. The image of that figure, a silent watcher in the darkness, is a reminder of the night my solo camping trip turned into a brush with something unsettling. I mean, what if the guys wanted to harm me? I'm not sure how I would have reacted. Just thinking about it scares me. Big mistake at 21, moving out before I could truly afford it. Months of scouring online listings, calling about shoebox apartments, and begging friends to be roommates. Freedom was the ultimate prize, and anything less felt like a prison sentence. Then, a beacon of hope, a Facebook post advertising a room for rent. 2-bedroom house, owner renting out the spare room. Messaged the guy, got a reply instantly. A few questions, then a document, a mountain of rules, mostly common sense stuff like quiet hours and guest limitations. Agreed to everything, and that same day, I swung by to check out the place. Wow. Spotless. Picture perfect. Decorated like a scene straight out of a design magazine. Furnished to the nines with plush couches, trendy throw pillows, and enough decorative lamps to rival a Broadway play. But the owner, Terry, late 20s, threw me off. Didn't match the house at all. Grungy t-shirt, mismatched socks, and a strange way of talking that made you feel like you were listening to a riddle wrapped in an enigma. Blinded by the freedom dream, I ignored the dissonance. A week later, a packed rental van, boxes galore, and I was pulling into the driveway, ready to embark on this new chapter of glorious independence. Stepped inside, and did a double take. Empty. No decorations, no furniture, except a lonely couch in the living room, its worn leather screaming of countless movie nights. Totally different vibe. Terry stood there, oblivious, chattering excitedly about his new roommate like a kid who just got a puppy. I asked about the furniture, the drastic change from the pictures. Ignored my question completely. Straight to shoving boxes around, muttering something about needing to redecorate for a more minimalist vibe. Weirded out, but I moved in anyway. After all, a roof over my head and a, somewhat creepy, roommate beat the alternative of crashing on a friend's couch. Weeks flew by. Barely saw Terry. Always working, late nights that stretched into the early hours of the morning. Then, a month in, the weirdness escalated. Terry stopped coming home most nights. Maybe once a week, around 2 or 3 a.m., I'd hear him creep in, the floorboards groaning under his weight. He'd clatter around downstairs, muffled noises suggesting hurried activity, then leave again, vanishing for another week. Part of me didn't care. The house to myself was a perk, a chance to blast music without complaints and sprawl out on the entire couch like a starfish. But the other part was buzzing with curiosity. Why the sudden reclusiveness? He wanted a roommate, now he's never here. Was there something shady going on under my roof? Then, one night, 2 a.m., weeks since I'd last seen Terry. A jolt. Banging on my door, his voice booming my name with a panicked edge. Heart pounding like a drum solo, I scrambled out of bed. Terry stood there, dripping sweat, eyes wild and darting around the hallway like a cornered animal. "Don't leave your room," he barked, his voice hoarse. Before I could even stammer a question, he yanked the handle clean out of the door, slamming it shut with a force that rattled the entire house. Speechless, I listened as he stomped downstairs. Curiosity gnawing at me like a persistent mouse, I cracked the door open a sliver. The sound of something heavy being dragged across the floor, heading towards the garage. Adrenaline kicked in. This wasn't late-night snack cravings. This was something serious. I raced downstairs, following the noise. A trail of mud snaked across the kitchen floor, leading towards the garage door. Yanked on it, locked from the inside. This was bad. Better to cut my losses and get myself out of here. I bolted for my car, phone in hand, dialing the police as I peeled away from the curb, tires screeching in protest. They arrived to find an empty house, no Terry, the mud trail mysteriously vanished. Days of investigation revealed a shocking truth: Terry wasn't the owner. He was subletting illegally. The documents I signed? Fake. Terry probably wasn't even his real name. He disappeared without a trace, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and a lingering sense of unease. No clue what he was up to, but his desperate pleas for me to stay in my room and his vanishing act screamed he was hiding something dark. The biggest question mark. Why did he want me as a roommate so badly? What were his plans for this mysterious late-night activity that involved heavy objects and the garage? I barely escaped before finding out the hard way. The whole experience chills me to the bone, a constant reminder that sometimes, things that seem too good to be true, really are not. "3 years back, for work, I moved a few states down the East Coast to a new city. Tight on cash, a pre-move visit wasn't in the cards. Luckily, it was just a rental. Mid-September, the movers loaded everything up, delivering it to the house. The landlord, super nice, even let them in to unload since I wouldn't arrive for another week. Finally, a Monday evening, I pulled up and saw the place for the first time. Boxes everywhere, furniture scattered, a mess, but the house itself seemed alright. Interesting layout, single story, with the kitchen and living room on one side, separated by a long hallway leading to all the bedrooms and bathrooms. Exhausted from the long drive, I tackled the master bedroom first, assembling the bed with the lingering promise of sleep. No clock yet, so I have no idea what time it was, but in the dead of night, a strange sound woke me. Thinking it was the house settling in, creaks and groans you expect from an unfamiliar place, I decided to check it out, see if it needed mentioning to the landlord. Up I got, padding towards the source of the sound down the hallway. As I neared the doorway, the noise stopped abruptly. Eerie silence replaced it. Pitch black hallway. Flicked on the light, nothing there. Cautiously, I walked down, peeking into the living room, looked the same, bathed in the moonlight streaming through the window. Just to be sure, I flipped on the lights. Footprints, scattered all over the floor, weaving between the boxes. Figured it was the movers, and with nothing else amiss, I retreated back to the bedroom. Falling back asleep wasn't easy. The sound stopping at the door just wouldn't leave my mind. Tried explaining it away as the house settling, but nothing clicked. Drifting back to sleep felt like a minute when a loud thud jolted me awake, followed by footsteps sprinting down the hall. Eyes flew open, darting to my bedroom door, wide open. Footprints, clear as day, leading right up to my bed. Heart hammering in my chest, I scrambled to see who it was, but they were long gone. Just scuffed marks where they ran away in a panic. That night I saw a man in the house. I couldn't talk to him, because he was moving around the house as if walking away from me, but he wasn't hiding. He was very creepy looking, seemed to be like an old man from a long time ago. Was he trapped in the house? Phone in hand, I called the police, barricading myself in the bathroom until they arrived. Oddly enough, they found no signs of a break-in, except for the footprints. I convinced myself they got in during the week before I arrived, maybe while the house was empty between tenants. But something felt off. Unpacking revealed nothing missing, not a single thing out of place. Made me wonder what they were even doing there, but the biggest mystery, why did they approach my bed? And what was that thump right before they bolted? The landlord readily let me break the lease, as long as I kept the whole thing quiet. At the time, I figured he just didn't want anyone scared away, losing out on rent from a new tenant. Now, I'm not so sure. The whole experience left a chill down my spine, a constant reminder that sometimes things are too good to be true, especially a seemingly nice landlord with a conveniently empty house. Why were there footprints leading to my bed? What were they planning to do to me?